we are. I am Reverend Karen Lewis, and it is my joy to be here. It's my joy to serve this community. And you know, I also want to acknowledge with every time when we make the decision, when we have a conscious completion, when we have any completion, however conscious we address it and look at it, there are emotions that come with it, right? And so we really want to honor all of the emotions that are floating around, not just here at the New Vision Center, but in the world, as we just completed with a very challenging year and a very challenging time, and individually, people completing relationships, completing places to live that don't fit their needs anymore, jobs are changing, a co-ministry is coming to an end. We don't want to not create the space for the emotions to move through all of that and to acknowledge them and then to let them go. And to show that it is okay. It is okay. Life changes. Many of you know we had a beautiful wedding planned here this weekend, and for various circumstances it didn't happen, and it's okay. And we need to be willing to acknowledge the emotions, because otherwise they find a way to come out at very inopportune times. I don't know if that ever happened to you, but that happened to me once. So much for that. Well, here we are, a new year, a new lots of things. And this talk today is actually called Conscious Completion. And I want to spend some time today to walk through how can we support ourselves through this idea of a conscious completion so that we can truly open up to receive the new, to be available, unencumbered for what wants to make itself known through us as us. And we're going to start off with a quote. If I can put this out, there we go, from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says, "Finish each day and be done with it. You have done what you could. Some blunders and absurdities no doubt crept in. Forget them as soon as you can. Tomorrow is a new day." Forget them as soon as you can. And so I want to take a moment and ask all of us, all of you here, to perhaps close your eyes and feel into what absurdities or blunders crept in yesterday, in yesteryear, and feel into, am I ready to really lay that down? And I hear a couple of yeses, and it's important to be with it. I assume there are some where we are like, yes, I am done with that. And then there might be other things that are coming to a completion, and we are not quite complete with it. And this idea of a conscious completion, of looking straight into what is coming to an end, has some benefits. One of the benefits I already pointed to, and that is the benefit of giving us some space to process our emotions, our feelings, to have it be okay to mourn, to grieve, to cry, as well as to celebrate. It is so important. And I feel sometimes in our society, but also in this teaching, we have like a tendency to, okay, but let's get to the good stuff. I'm sure many of you have engaged in some rituals for this new year. Perhaps you participated in a burning bowl ceremony, or setting intentions, or signed up for the workshop on Friday, you know, something. If not, you still have a chance. But this work is so important for us to take the time and connect with, am I completely done with it? Or perhaps there's some forgiveness work that I still need to do. Perhaps there's some leaning into loving kindness that is called here for. Desmond Tutu, who made his transition about 10 days ago, always talked about the first step before we can engage in forgiveness or even completion is to be willing, to feel our own willingness. I have this beautiful little wooden saying. It says, I am willing. It stands by my bedside, actually. And very often, when something happens, I remind myself, I am willing to be present to this. And it is that willingness that prepares us to receive it. So again, I ask you to close your eyes right here in the sanctuary, online, wherever you find yourself, whatever you connected with that is coming to an end for you. And feel into, ask yourself, am I willing to do the work? Am I willing to accept this in my life fully? Yes. And come back here. And so now we ask ourselves, well, what does that all have to do with a spiritual community, with a spiritual teaching that we teach here, with what we practice here at the New Vision Center? I strongly believe that we are invited, each one individually is invited to ask yourself, how do I then want to relate to this teaching, to this center? How am I willing to perhaps step in deeper so my needs can be met? You see, what happens often, we find ourselves in a center like this, and we look at the offerings, but we don't make the connection that this is really for me to heal, for me to learn, to live the life I came here to learn, that I came here to live, for my gifts to be given in a way that is satisfying for myself and serves the world. I remember when I first stepped into the sanctuary over in Hayden about 14 years ago, I know that the first month I was just in the back and I truly had no idea what the people on the platform were talking about. I couldn't hear it. And I was so busy with relating to that unconditional love that is present in the sanctuary that I couldn't hear about classes or workshops or this or that. I didn't know. So I want to welcome each one of you who is here newer and know that I get it. I understand. And yet, there's a time where you want to ask yourself, how do I want to utilize these offerings for my own spiritual maturity, for my own advancement? In the first 4 weeks of the year, in all of the centers for spiritual living, so in churches just like ours here all over the world, the focus is on the foundation, on the basics of this teaching. We do it every year. Those of you who are what I call veterans, remember it. You know, we do it every year. We look at the basics of this teaching. And the reason we do that, I don't want you to think like it's elementary or we have gone beyond that. We don't need to look at that anymore. But rather, I want you to think about it as the elementary foundation of this teaching. The science of mind is this wonderful, wonderful teaching that offers so much. And sometimes we can get a little too focused, perhaps, on the advancement. And so once a year, for 4 weeks, we come back to the basics. And I want to share with you a letter that I received. It's quite a while back now. It was from somebody who was part of New Vision Center and then moved away and then came back. And they wrote this letter and they said that when they came back, they had this feeling that we were so focused on the foundation. And they were really looking for higher advancement spirituality. And they found themselves getting quite irritated by it. And at the end of the letter, this person said this, it came to a powerful realization. And so they wrote, "At long last, I have learned that spiritual growth is not about some exotic curriculum of ever more advanced content and levels of mysticism. It's about the same foundational truth. It's about learning the same foundational truth over and over and over again until our every thought, word, and action is in perfect harmony with heaven." Yes, is in perfect harmony with the divinity that is life. I love that. And so I want to share some of those basics. Today I'm going to be sharing a lot about our teaching and all of those things. And then the next 4 weeks, Reverend Leslie, Reverend Lori, and myself, we will really dive into the principles, the fundamental principles of this teaching. How does that sound? All right. That sounds good. So our founder, his name is Dr. Ernest Holmes, and he was born in New England in 1887. And he was born and raised in the East and then gravitated to the West Coast, where he did most of his teaching and healing work. Now, we have a wonderful slide of the painting that you have probably seen. It hangs in our lobby here. It was created by Reverend Lori Frisbee, who I think it came from a foundations project, and then it evolved into this. Isn't that an amazing painting? Yes. And so it shows us the roots, so we're going to leave this up as I share some of this information. So he was very much influenced by the writings of Emerson and the American Transcendentalists, and also by a British judge by the name of Thomas Troward, as well as reading some of the early translations of the Upanishads. And so he took all of what he discovered and created this work that would be called The Science of Mind and Spirit. He was a wildly popular and very gifted speaker. He was filling auditoriums wherever he would go, and first on the West Coast, and then he expanded all over this country. So our teaching then is a blend of Eastern and Christian mysticism. And we also bring into it the wisdom of all the faith traditions. That's why we have the honoring of the faith traditions during our candle lighting ceremony. Because we believe that the truth does not belong to just one faith tradition. There is a golden thread of truth that weaves its way through all of the faith traditions. And so that is what we honor when we light the candles and ask to send our love to all of those faith traditions. Now, this teaching is meant to be a very practical spirituality, something that is not just used on Sunday or makes for good talks or gives us some ahas on Sundays, but rather it is intended to be used every day and in every area of our life. And that goes back to what that beloved wrote, right? Because when we hear something, we just hear it. But when we know it, all of a sudden our relationships are more harmonious. All of a sudden our relationship with money is easier with all the resources. That's how we know that we know that we know. Dr. Ernest Holmes says it this way: the science of mind and spirit is a direct approach to God and the conscious use of the God power in every activity of living. If you have been in our lobby at the office, you have seen that beautiful quote from Dr. Ernest Holmes that we have on the wall. And it says, there's a power for good in the universe greater than we are, and we can use it. And that is what this teaching teaches us, right? It teaches us, how can I be in alignment with the truth that life force just pulsates through me and creates all around me the life that I want to be living. That is what we teach here. Now, our movement then is a worldwide movement. It used to be called religious science, and that became increasingly complicated for people, that name. So I want to share some of the things we are not. We are not Christian Science, and we are not Scientology. Just for those of you who are newer and your friends say, is that Scientology? You just say, no, the minister said it's not. It's really not. It has nothing to do with it. But we hear that question quite often. So our teaching is called the science of mind and teaching, the science of mind and spirit. And then, so we are up there, all the way there. Centers for Spiritual Living is the umbrella organization under which we operate. And then even above that is the umbrella of New Thought. And sometimes it's called New Thought, Ageless Wisdom. Now, our movement is not a heavy-handed, controlling, domineering kind of a faith tradition. Because when we look back in history, too many religions have been really toxic in that, right? They have told people what to do, and they had to fit into a box. And I don't know about you, but when I was a little girl, I didn't fit into that box, and it created a lot of challenges for me, because I wanted to be closer to the divine, to God, but I was told I couldn't fit there. So our teaching is not about telling people what to think. We don't get involved with endorsing or denouncing any political figures or parties or anything like that. Every once in a while, when we notice, when it comes to our attention, some social injustice that is incongruent with what we believe, to reveal the power of love for everyone, we might step in or take a stand and talk about that. But we don't tell people who to vote for or who not to vote for. Now, when we take a look at history and the history of religions, we see that there are some religions who went a different way, right? They told people how to be, what to do, who to love. There's really the two twin sins of religions that are often referred to as absolutism and authoritarianism. So absolutism is like, this is the way, the only way, there's no other way. You will never, ever, ever hear that here. And out of that really comes this authoritarianism where people are being told what to think. Now, we are an alternative. This teaching is really an alternative in that we inspire to help people learn how to think differently. So that a new thought could free us from our limitations. That a new thought could bring forth more freedom, more love in our lives. That is what we are interested in. That is what we do here. So, we are part of the evolution of spirituality. And one more thing from Dr. Ernest Holmes, he said, the religion of the future will appear when religion gets over its superstition, science gets over its materialism, and philosophy gets over its duality. We are forerunners in a campaign of spiritual freedom, intellectual integrity, and emotional stability in a spiritual world. It is our privilege to take part in a new spiritual renaissance. So that is what you walked into this morning. Yeah, right? Are you at the right place? Yes. So wonderful. So now then, with keeping all of this in mind, we can think about, okay, so there's this wonderful teaching, there's this wonderful community that's going to help me gain perhaps what could be called spiritual maturity. And I believe we have a quote, or what spiritual maturity is, the gradual process of developing healthy and life-giving ways in relating to oneself, to one another, and to the environment. And often, it looks like this, does it not? It's like, okay, I kind of feel like I want to be here, but I don't know how to get there. Do you ever feel that way? Right? That is where these wonderful annual themes come in. You might remember our powerful theme last year, the spiritual hero's journey. Now, at times, that spiritual hero's journey felt like this to me. That might have just been me. So this year, we are going to engage in perhaps a kinder, gradual spiritual awakening, spiritual maturing. And I think we have one more slide. You know, I'm envisioning more a walk. Now, don't confuse it with not being able to take us as deep as the last year took us. We're going to do it a little slower, with more pauses in between, so we can catch up. And so, I would like to introduce the new annual theme. I think we have a couple more minutes. And there it is, the seeds of love. Yes, right? We are going to lean a lot more into nature. We're going to get our clues how to move forward with nature. We're going to be nurturing the soil. We're going to be celebrating the growth, and we're going to be harvesting together. And that is our new annual theme. For the next 4 weeks, we are going to be deepening into the principles, and then we're going to take care of the soil that we can all grow from. As always, I am so glad to be on this journey with you. Thank you for being here, and so it is. And now we do what we love to do here. We are going to anchor this in truth. We're going to anchor it with a spiritual mind treatment. And I invite all of the practitioners, the ministers of this teaching, to rise and hold the consciousness with me. This beautiful space where we are invited to open up, to recognize that there is one power. There's only one activity. It is life itself. It is God. It is divine. It is sweet spirit. And we recognize that it is at the very center of our being. So we consciously step into this feeling tone, this deep knowingness. The love that is at the very center of our being is the divine. There's only one God. And it is from this place that we open up. We're consciously laying down anything that doesn't serve us anymore and open up to the newness that is present, to the possibilities. How grateful I am for all of the prayer requests that have been submitted to the New Vision Center, for the knowingness that clarity brings forth these manifestations. And so there's nothing more to do but to place this word into universal law, into the law that says, yes, yes, my beloveds, it is already done. We let it be, we let it go, and so it is.